I remember distinctly when I found out that we were at war. As a 13-year-old, I set pins at the bowling alley. Now, you don't see that when you go to the bowling alley now. That's all automatic. But in those days, you had to get down in that pit behind the alley and put the pins up into the rack. And then, of course, you had to jam it down to make them set straight. And I was working on a Sunday afternoon in the bowling alley, and I heard a very unusual sound. Two young men came up 2nd Street outside the window. I had the window open, and they were saying, "Extra, extra, Pearl Harbor bound." Extra. We never saw an extra of the St. Louis paper. In St. Louis, that was very common for newsboys to go up and down the street as often as 6 times a day with different editions of the paper. And they would have the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, they would have the St. Louis Star-Times. The St. Louis Globe-Democrat was a morning paper. And you could go out and buy a paper, 3 cents or 6 cents, I don't remember, it wasn't very much. And these, we never did see an extra being sold in Washington. So I listened, and I asked them, when they came to the window, I said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" "We don't know." I didn't know either. Had to find that out the next day. But the war came on for a teenager who, I suppose I read the sports section and the comic section, but I sure didn't read the front page or the editorial page. And so it came on as a surprise to me. After that, a lot of things changed. We had paper drives where on a designated day, they'd come around on every street in town and pick up all of the newspapers that you would save. Newspapers were important in the production of ammunition. We also had lard, L-A-R-D drives, because lard was a very important thing in the manufacture of arms, of ammunition. We had scrap metal drives. You can imagine what that was. Anything that was lying around the house. And sometimes they would have an aluminum drive, not very often, but women would give aluminum pots, that were still good because this was a war effort. Clothing was, sparse. You got basic things. We didn't know what a hoodie was. That wasn't even invented in those days. But we had enough clothing, but you couldn't go to, as an example, J.C. Penney and expect to find a suit on the rack that would fit you. They just didn't have them. There were, let's see. I think we had some old clothing drives, but that's not clear in my mind. I don't know. But I remember all of the other drives. And they usually used the Boy Scouts to help with that, to run to the curb, from the curb to the truck or whatever you were using to gather it. I used to enjoy that, You were a big shot. You got to do that. Otherwise, you stay off the street. Let's see, what else do I remember? Food items.